Today, playing with dynamos again, funnily enough. I have just repaired the insulation on the second dynamo, the one that actually works. I'm not going to touch the coils at all. They all seem good. I just re-insulated over the wires. There's plenty of room in there, so in fact it's a little bit chunky, should be okay. I replaced the wires as well. The old one, I'm very keen to try winding new coils for these. So I actually cut one apart. I should have worn gloves doing this. It's horribly oily, just all the way through. And you can see the insulation's just gone. I think that's what's wrong with it. But I just hacksawed through it so I could count the number of windings, and it's 198 windings of 0.09mm wire. I found a website that shows how somebody made their own field coils for a motorcycle dynamo, and I think the same technique will work for this if I can get the wire. And the only other thing I've done is paint some parts. Finally have a working dynamo. I did end up needing to cannibalize some parts from the first one, which is a bit of a shame because I was looking at rewinding the field coils on that one. That was this one here, but I ended up needing to steal a couple of parts from it to make the other one work. So for now, this one will just have to go into a box as spares or something that could be rebuilt at a later point. This was one of the coils that I cut apart to be able to count the number of windings. I think it was 0.9mm wire, which I think is 18, 19 gauge. I'm not sure on that. And there were 198 turns for this particular coil. But you can see how cooked that was. The part I needed to steal came off here. This was the brush holder. I actually ended up swapping around the brush holders, but I was redoing the split pins that hold the little springs in place, and had discovered that one of them didn't have a split pin, it just had a piece of wire through it. So I thought, oh, I'll replace that, and then discovered that the terminal is actually broken off. So I figured, well, since I've got a good one, I'll use the replacement one. So these are the same whether they're in the 2-brush or the 3-brush dynamos. So all the brushes are back in there, new split pins. The wiring's all kind of temporary at the moment. I need to get a ring terminal. I've run out of ring terminals, so there needs to be a ring terminal that goes on this end of the field coil, which goes to ground, which is down here. For now it's just grounded to the body. You can actually see on this how one of the terminals is insulated, one of the brushes rather, and the other one isn't. So the one that isn't is your ground terminal. And I've just got the D output and the field output wired together. This one all went together reasonably well. These aren't the right screws for here. They're meant to be sort of countersunk slotted screws, I believe. But it was missing most of those. It already had bolts in there, so I just replaced the bolts. Just to be consistent. I think that should hold okay. There's no slop in those. They do need to be quite tight though, I think. So they've been done up really tight, and there's some Loctite holding them. And I've put the other thing I had to do was actually redo the spacers. There was a spacer missing to stop the armature going backwards and forwards in here. So I had to do what I did on the other one. I just measured it up and ended up making spacers from hardened washers. So this all went back together quite well. This is held on a taper, and there is a key on there as well. I just made sure that was well tapped home. You can see there's no end-to-end movement in it, but it spins nicely. So my little drive shaft here is getting really knackered because as soon as the load comes on it, it puts quite a load on this, and this starts slipping. But we should be able to... the other thing I had to do was remake the little driving dog. The hole for that had been turned oval, basically, so I drilled it out the next size up and made an oversized pin to fit in there, and also made a new locking screw to go in the end. This meter I got an analog meter because sometimes it's easier to see movement on an analog meter than on the digital one. Before we spin this up slowly, so that's 6, 7, 8 volts. Yep. Now you could see it started going more than 10 volts there. So I'm pretty sure this now works okay, which is good. The only other slightly annoying thing is I cleaned all of this up and painted it, and I've somehow lost the screw that goes through there. So I'll probably have to make something up for that unless I can find it. At one point I heard something fall on the floor and didn't think much of it, but it seems to have vanished. So, well, I should probably check in the bottom of the vacuum cleaner. But this, I think this should do. This should work now. I don't know for how long, but at least that's done. I do need to see if I can make or clean up. This is the little terminal block that goes on the end. That may clean up okay. I'm not sure what sort of cover goes over the top of that, but maybe I can get a replacement one of those, or I can 3D print something or make something, maybe cast it in resin, I'm not sure. Hopefully I can find another one anyway. For now, the bare wires coming out of it are okay. The next job that I was hoping to get to this weekend, but I've run out of time, is sorting out the brakes. I already had it all pretty much set up on the torque tube before, but one of the things I'm going to need to do is sort out the handbrake. So this is an unmodified handbrake from a saloon car, and you can see if that goes where that needs to go, it's slightly too high. It's actually pretty much higher than the steering wheel. So this is what came on the parts car, and this was obviously someone's attempt to adjust a handbrake to make it fit. But this is fairly beaten up. I'm sure I can come up with something a bit better than that. This is quite hefty, quite solid steel. But yeah, I'm wondering if I can... This one, I probably don't want to muck around with this one too much because it's in nice condition. This one here, I could always cut it off here and maybe weld on something else, remake the handle part somehow. I'm not really certain about that yet. The rest of it should all go back together fairly well. On the parts car, I've ended up with multiple sets of pedals. It's anything like most of the Riley parts. These are all going to be different, but you know, those are accelerator pedals there. You can see, I don't know if that's just been bent by accident or that's how they're supposed to be. These are different saloon car brake pedals. Again, you can see these are all kind of different. It's a bit hard sometimes to even tell what's what, but I'm imagining that could be a clutch pedal. That would go down in there, because you can see it sort of curves around the gearbox, and it's got the little pin there for actuating the gearbox, the clutch rather, which would make this one a brake pedal, which makes sense because it's got the little rod that goes to the brake mechanism. This one is also a brake pedal. You can see they kind of match up, but with different amounts of leverage. And then these two are actually well, they're not castings, they're made up. These are supposed to be proper Brooklyn style pedals. So this one is the brake, you can see that sort of matches up. So it's just going to be a matter of trying to figure out what's going to work with the parts I've got. I believe in the real Brooklyns the gearboxes were different, so that means I am going to have to adapt and try and make what I have work in this car. But it's a problem lots of people have solved before, so like all of the things on this car, I'll just keep plugging away at it and figure out what works in the end.